You know, a lot of people talk about being happy and being joyful. However, I do understand that for some people that is particularly difficult because in a particular situation in your life, you might be overwhelmed with all kinds of problems and with the difficult situations and people. It's never easy to just be joyful and happy just by way of your own volition or your own will. It's very difficult to do that. For example, what I generally try to do is when I'm not happy is that I try to not do the opposite, which is to be happy, because to me that's just too big a jump. So what I do is I first try to understand why I am not happy and I just let it go. I let that sensation of unhappiness just dissolve away. The other thing I found out is that when you're happy, there is a tendency to waste that energy of happiness and to weaken your nerves. So, what you want to do is you want to do a spiritual way of being happy, which is by cultivating joy. Joy is something you cultivate, happiness is something you cultivate. It's something that you contain, it's something that you can restrain. Because too much of laughing is not always a good thing. Um, Too much of crying is never a good thing, as you know. It's always best to be somewhere in between. So, joy is something that you contain, joy is something that you transform. And when you transform joy, it becomes into a very high form of feeling or of enjoying something. And that is called bliss. We follow all kinds of things to become happy, whether it's having a cigarette that makes us happy for the moment, or whether it's just going for a walk, or whether it's seeing someone we really love. There's a difference between this kind of happiness and joy that I'm talking about. Um, because these kinds of happiness are not really happiness, it's called relief. And it's relief from stress, basically. Because even when you're feeling sad, it's a form of stress. Because sadness is there because you're not getting what you want in order to feel happy. And it's as simple as that. And I can only tell you by way of an example. It's like if I'm not getting uh, I don't know, if I'm not getting the kind of hotel that I want, it's going to make me feel happy. And what I need to do is I need to accept the fact that I can't get that particular kind of hotel that I'm looking for and be happy with the other option. The point is, I need to be happy. But what if that hotel that I don't get is not making me feel happy, and then the other hotel that I do get, which is not the one that I wanted, doesn't make me feel happy, but I don't mind at all. I am in a state of stability. I am in a state of joy. I think that is more important, that you're in a state of joy, that you're in a state of stability. Because happiness and joy is not always about being like, it's such a wonderful thing that's going on. You can also be without a big, bright smile, and you can just be, I don't know, you can just be you and you can be happy. You can be perfectly normal inside, you know? And I think this is the problem with human society at large is that they go for the gimmicks, they go for the superficiality, quite obviously, if you just look at the media nowadays. And so being happy is a very complicated thing. Now, obviously, I'm recording this video with the mobile and, for various reasons. And that's Irina the cat that scratched me over here. And, I'm quite all right with it, but she's not feeling happy for some reason. She's just going wow, wow, wow. But anyways, so being happy is an art, but it's just not an art. It's a technique. Being happy is something so natural that people just take it for granted. Sometimes when you want to feel happy, because of other people around you and because of certain circumstances around you or within you, you're not able to express that happiness. It can happen that this is the case for many people. What do you do in this case? Well, as a reaction, what happens to many people is that they tend to withdraw. So they're feeling happy, but they can't express it because they feel other people mind or the situation does not is not conducive towards them expressing that happiness. Imagine someone is feeling sad and depressed, but you're feeling happy, and that person or those people are sad and depressed, and you're kind of like, why are you sad and depressed? It's such a happy day. Come on, wake up. But what if those people are like, will you just shut up? Like, we're facing a really difficult situation, and it's so inappropriate for you to be happy at this moment. It's so inappropriate for you to feel joyful at the expense of us feeling sort of like really shitty. What do you do in this situation? The best thing to do over here, and the most natural thing that happens in this situation, is Irina the cat, by the way. She's right over here. I'll make you happy. You can sit over here. By the way, this is Irina the cat. She's a bit aggressive. There you go. You know. So, well, what do you do in this situation where people are not happy the fact that you're happy because they are stressed out? It's like being in a war and you're just being happy and screaming, oh, the world is so beautiful. And these guys are getting shot with bullets and they're running for their lives and they're on the edge in terms of stress. And the commander's like, shh, come on, keep it down. Focus on the war. What are you doing? You're losing time. You're losing your focus. You're putting your teammates in danger, your soldiers in danger. And then the person takes offense. Oh, you guys are such bitter, unhappy people. It's important to look at this point at both perspectives because both people are correct and both people are wrong. And that's why I told you it's always, always important to be balanced and always important to be grounded. Okay? And obviously, being happy is not the most easiest thing to do. Being sad, however, seems to be a very easy thing to come by. And this is why we're always chasing happiness, because we feel that it's never there to stay. We feel that sadness and boredom are the only true permanent states. And you know why? It's because things like death, disease, losing your stability, losing your means of living, or being afflicted by many things that I don't even want to talk about, that these things become such a big wall that comes between you and happiness that it becomes impossible for you to feel that there is a right for you to be happy. And that's where people go into this state of, okay, I'm not going to feel happy, but I'm not going to feel sad, because if I feel sad, as it is, I'm vulnerable, as it is, I feel so unhappy, I'm not going to feel any more happy, because I might as well, I don't know, commit suicide at that point, because it's such a horrible world that I'm living in. So these people tend to exist in this twilight zone. Obviously, I'm talking in general in this video. I don't have fancy equipment. I don't have studio lighting and all of these things. But I beg of you all to listen to what I'm talking about more than how I appear as a person. Because happiness can also be very superficial and can actually work to some extent. Because there are people who are like, well, just be happy, just smile. But it's difficult. I do this, I used to do this, and I tell you what, it gets annoying after a certain point where you're just like, listen, I'm feeling really unhappy and I want to be sort of left alone. I want to process this unhappiness, because sometimes it's not you who's unhappy, it's probably your nervous system that is reacting to some kind of an event and that needs this form of being silent to kind of like calm itself down. Listen, it's very simple, because if you've looked at saints and sages, they don't have this perpetual lunatic kind of a, so happy. Hi, I'm Jesus Christ. Hi, I'm Krishna with the flute. Those are stand-up comedians. I mean, if you want that kind of happiness, go to I don't know, download a series of Russell Peters, or go to a stand-up comedy show or something like that, and get that kind of happiness, because that's really enjoyable. That loony toony kind of happiness is very good. And after you go to these stand-up comedies, or after you watch something funny, you're in a state of joy, you're in a state of stability for how many hours? until you're met with this problem that, keeps coming to you. And that's when you have to become silent, and that's when you have to confront it. Because if you don't confront that problem, and if you just escape away, as many alcoholics do, as many people addicted to various kinds of things, use these substances and these things as a way of escaping the real problems that's affecting them. It's this kind of superficial happiness is a kind of an addiction, and it's a kind of an escape. um, so how do you actually cultivate joy at a deeper level? you know it's difficult. What it requires a person to do is to process why you feel happy, and why it's important to feel happy, firstly, and secondly, why you're feeling sad, and what you can do to avoid feeling sad, or if it's possible to avoid that. This is called introspection. This is called svadhyaya in yoga. Svadhyaya means to look within. To look within necessarily, by necessity, requires you to have some alone time, to be patient, to be silent, to process things, or to do some kind of activity which allows your mind, that part of your mind, to work in the background without affecting the work that you have to do right now that's important. Say you're brushing your teeth, and you have this really bad thought about some people or some things that have been done to you, and you're so angry and like, God. But what if you are able to develop a kind of what's commonly known in yoga as witness consciousness, which is basically a form of swadhyaya, or looking within, or being introspective, or turning the senses within? Well, you brush your teeth, you're looking at these thoughts, but you're being very analytical, and you're kind of like, right. You're detaching, you're not being emotional about it. You're developing what's called healthy detachment, or a healthy state of being sort of like focused on what you're doing and what you're not supposed to do. To a large part, this by in a large way, by a large way, this comes through experience. Um, a lot of what we learn from life is through experience. So it could be that you've been angry so many times, and you've understood that anger in itself is such a bad emotion, that by the very virtue of this experience, even if you feel angry, you're like, you know what, let me just not, right? But what happens when you do that is that there's a tendency to suppress, and that tendency of suppression, will become a very complicated thing later on when you want to feel happy, because they become sort of like excess baggage, or luggage. You want to feel happy, but this thing just keeps coming up. These waves of anger that you've kept suppressed. You don't By becoming a witness, you don't do it by separating yourself from those feelings and those emotions and those problems. You don't do it that way. That's a very uh, very, very, very difficult way to do it. And it can create what in psychology is called depersonalization. Okay, and that's a very dangerous uh, situation to be in, as a person who is in society, and who needs to function in society. If you're an Aghori, or if you're an Aga Baba, or if you're a next level ascetic who lives in the mountains, yeah, that might work for you. Don't create separation. If you have a problem, what you want to do about that problem is, you want to understand that that problem is happening inside of you. Because if it was happening outside of you and has got nothing to do with you, and if it's so separate from you, why are you getting affected by it? Why? No, it is affecting you because a large part of it is also, working inside of you. Now, I can't be clear enough without giving you an example, but I'm going to make this video short because it's already 14 minutes long. Look, let's say you have cancer, for example. you can't sort of be like, well, let me just ignore the problem and let me just not, be bothered about the fact that I have cancer and be happy and not worry about my two kids who need to, you know, eat and I'm the only one who earns money for them. What do I do in this situation? My God, there's going to be stress. Obviously, there's going to be stress. How can you tell someone to separate yourself from the situation and just be in pure bliss and happiness? It's such an incorrect concept. What you have to do is you have to develop a state of illumination where you understand the problem and you accept it in totality and you're ready to face the worst. And that requires courage. And that garners character. That is character development, you know? Sometimes when you think that people who take their lives or who escape from society, we call them cowards. It's not always the case because many a times in war or in great events in history, people who have given up their lives have had to muster up great courage in order to do such acts. It's never easy to escape from society or to just simply run away from problems. That is separation. That is creating the separation between you and the problem, and just running away from it. That escapism. Even if it works, it's never easy. It's gonna make you happy, but in the back of your mind, you're gonna be like, well, I wish that problem wasn't there in the first place, or I didn't deal with it. But eventually you have to detach and you gotta let go, and you need to create that separation. What I'm saying is that problem and the way it presents itself is an opportunity for you to understand what life is about. It becomes philosophical, where you are in life, what you need to do, and how you can do it. And whatever you do or whatever you need to do is not always your fault or is not the fault of the world. It's just the way the world is and it needs to become better. You need to go into a process of acceptance. You need to go into a process of sort of like, instead of being in denial and creating separation, you need to create connection and be like, fine, this is the way it is. And I'm ready to move on if I have to. And I'm ready to move on. And I'm ready to face the consequence of whatever it is that is, within the scope of whatever it is that I need to experience in life, you know? But it's never by separating. It's never by, okay, this is separate, I am separate, the walls are separate, the clouds are separate, but that's obvious, isn't it? That's the most obvious thing. I mean, you would be a lunatic to think that everything is all the same because intrinsically it's not. Inherently it isn't. Yet at the same time, who are you? And instead of asking what your purpose is, you should know who you are. You are a person and your name is so and so, which was given to you at the time you were born. And a human has this sort of lifespan and there are these things going on inside a society, and it's about awareness at the end of the day. And it's unbelievable that people talk about I don't know, witness consciousness in this very separative kind of a way, which is absolutely incorrect and kind of dangerous. Now, being happy and joyful doesn't mean you have to separate yourself from the problem and the situation. It means that regardless of what you're facing in life, regardless of what it is, whether you have to be happy or sad, you shouldn't be affected. That should be a first thought process, that you need to build what's called resilience. You need to build this reservoir of joy in the first place, where there are no leaks, where you don't laugh so much that all that energy of laughing is just expended, and then you're back to square one, feeling miserable again. So what's suggested in yoga and in other spiritual sciences, that you don't laugh too much and you don't feel excessively sad or in a state of morosefulness, morose, in a state of morbid, melancholy. to make it simple. You have to develop this tendency to remain in a state of equilibrium. Because when you're in the state of equilibrium, if you have to laugh, you're going to laugh. If you have to cry, you're going to be like, well, before I cry, the state of equilibrium is better than that state of crying, you know? So for the moment, let me consider being in a state of equilibrium. If I'm going to go into depression, well, let me explore that possibility of becoming depressed, but I can always return back to my center, to the state of equilibrium, if that state of depression is becoming too dangerous for my mental state, or if it's pushing me into a place where I really don't want to go into, you know? That's the advantage of developing equanimity of your mind. That's the advantage of being so-called joyful, but joyful not in this frivolous way, but in a way where no matter what happens, you're always going to be stable, at least emotionally, you know? Maybe not physically, maybe not mentally, not always, you know? Maybe not even emotionally, but to a large extent, your emotions is what causes most of the problems that we face in society, you know, as a society. Uh, you know, emotions are the things that we really need to control. Your mind is a lot more difficult to control as it is, you know, but if you can somehow gain control over your emotional state, which is over here, this center over here, you're going to go far ahead in terms of understanding how this works. Because when you approach this, you're going into analytics, you're going into, you know, processing and understanding things that don't necessarily relate to the problems happening over here. And when problems happen over here, that's when people express emotions, rage, anger, rage, fear, you know, sadness, happiness, all comes from this emotional center from over here. That's what controls this to a large extent. But it's conditional. It's very calculative. It's like, I want to feel emotionally stable and I want to feel kind of like blissful for, you know, for a few seconds. Ah, there's a cigarette. This is scheming right now. Let me take a cigarette. And it's all about scheming. Or let me plan this trip to this, you know, vacation spot. Let me do this. Let me do that. Let me plan this. Let me plan that. Let me plan on taking a walk. So you're dealing with emotions from a very meditative point of view, and to a large extent from an intellectual point of view when you go into philosophy and when you try and understand emotions. But what about just dealing with emotions straight up, as you know, as they show up, you know, for what they are, and this is a lot more effective, you know. Um, a lot of times, because we use this part of our, you know, being to control this, there is no direct control over this. So when, let's say there are no cigarettes, or let's say there is no money, let's say there is no life partner, let's say there is no, I don't know, car, or whatever it is that gave you stability, this is sort of be like, this is going to go into panic mode. Okay, now what do I do? What do I do? While this goes into panic mode, this thing over here is sort of like, oh my god, this is going into panic mode. Oh my god, what do we do? So you see how it's interconnected. But if you start from over here, if you're going to be like, well, I don't have a cigarette, I don't have a life partner. Do you see? Emotions and the mind are connected. When you stop this from overworking, when you stop this from getting too, you know, too um, uh, mechanical or automatic, when you bring in a certain amount of control, and you're sort of like, wait, I'm not going to let my mind run right. But how do you do it? Because I'm going to first start from this place, which is at the place of my emotions. And I am going to bring stability over here first. Because when I bring stability over here first, this will automatically calm down for a bit, you know? Because if I'm not able to calm down this through any other method where this is doing all the calming down for this place over here, and if this itself doesn't have its, its act together, if it doesn't have its, you know, its own place of stability, then how am I supposed to make myself feel stable over here? So when you want to feel sad, when you want to feel happy, when it's natural, do it. But when you're feeling sad, but when you're feeling angry and you're no longer able to control it, and it's just sort of like, it's so much suppression, and you just want to let go, what you have to do is you need to get away from that situation or from whatever it is that is causing you, that problem. But even when you get away from that situation, you find that anger and happiness and these things are present in you as a seed, you know? So even there, you then need to be like, okay, I have these things in me, so what do I do over here? You bring in stability. You don't bring in separativeness. You bring in stability. So if there is a situation where there is a lot of chaos and there's a lot of problems and a lot of turbulence, you have to sort of be like, well, this is what's happening, and as best as I can, let me try to manage my emotions. Because remember one thing, if you cannot control this, the mind, if the mind is controlling your emotions, and if you're not able to effectively bring in a separativeness of the highest kind, there is no use in you practicing any kind of eyewitness consciousness sort of thing that that yoga teaches you or other spiritual sciences teach you. It can only get you that far. Very, very advanced yogis who go off into the mountains or who live in isolation, to them isolation is by in and of itself a great solution. There's a problem with that person that I have, isolate. There's a problem with this, isolate. I don't want to isolate. It's so simple. But there's a problem happening over there. There's an emergency. There's a, I don't know, there's a person who needs help. They've fallen off the bike. I don't want to deal with it. Separate. I need to separate, isolate myself, go away from the situation that is causing me emotional turmoil. No, you don't do that, right? So what you do is you go towards that. You bring on courage. Because when you gain control over your emotions, your mind functions better. Okay, so for example, the person was in trouble. The bike has fallen down. So you're like, everything's gonna be fine. I'm gonna go there. I'm gonna be emotionally stable. Right. Now this starts working. Right. This is what we need to do. I need to call the ambulance. All right, people, we need to get this person stabilized and blah, blah, blah. Then this starts working. Okay? It would be ridiculous for you to be like, oh, the person has fallen. Well, be happy. Don't panic, people. Just be happy and think positive. Like, things are gonna be fine. Don't worry, man. Things are gonna be all right. Yeah, but deep down inside, you're panicking, and because you have practiced a kind of false positivity and joyfulness, that's very superficial. That is in the form of suppression. You're not really taking care of the problem in its essence. So if you want to be joyful and if you want to be happy, you need to develop a certain state of emotional stability. Mental stability comes afterwards, because if you're not emotionally stable in the first place, forget about mental stability. And that's it for me in this very brief 30-minute video, this talk on feeling joyful and happy, creating separativeness between a problem and you, between your emotions and that which is, causing your emotions to motion to get moved, your heart chakra, or this place to get ruffled up. How separativeness is not exactly the best way to go about in terms of dealing with this issue, and how it is best to cultivate a state of joyfulness, a state of calm and balance, you know. And this is a better way, in my humble opinion, to, go towards, happiness. Happiness comes from within. So if you're faking happiness and it's not coming from within, you know. Ah, goodbye, and thank you for watching this video. Subscribe to this channel, and if you like this video, hit that like button, and I'll be coming up with a few videos in the future, some interesting talks such as these. And I'm gonna leave you guys with one last piece of advice, because I teach yoga, is that yoga is something that is both physical and mental. So if you're doing all the mental steps of taking care of your issues, you're following the yums and the niyams, the rules and the regulations, and if you're having, like, a good diet, a yogic diet, or if you're practicing positive thinking, being cheerful, and all of these things, this is a very good thing to do. The reason why Hatha Yoga is a physical process and not just a life process and not just a mental process is that, if you look at yogis sitting in the mountain in the Himalayas, or just defying what's normal, it's physical, isn't it? The fact that they have to develop this kind of resilience, they're developing it through in a very physical way. So practicing yoga asanas will free up your circulatory, your respiratory, your nervous system especially, and it's gonna, normalize the functionings of your digestive system. And why is this important? Maybe you're not going to feel completely happy and joyful, but it's going to be easier for you because you've already taken care of that physical aspect of not feeling uncomfortable or unhappy. And that's the whole point of practicing Hatha Yoga, and why it's a physical practice primarily is because it deals with physical maladies. If you're feeling physically happy, it's going to be much easier for you to feel mentally happy as well. A lot of people have all of the things that they want in life materialistically, but they suffer a lot at a physical level, and they still have to deal with the unhappiness of death. So in Hatha Yoga, it starts from the physical body and then it moves towards the energetic part of your being. When it comes to the energetic part of your being, even if you're a beginner, you get there, you realize that there is something so deep within you that's just not physical and that's just not mental, and that requires you to pay more attention to it. That's the energetic part of your being. And so it's an exploration of sorts. So don't think that, Hatha Yoga and yoga is just a simple process and that everything can happen just through explanation. Well, I can talk to you guys about the experiences that I've had and how energy moves and all of these things. I'm going to talk to you guys about the main important channels, yogic channels, and why they're important in the next video. But it's a very very, very deep philosophy, this whole practice of yoga. So when you find other kinds of practices, which are very innovative, but they're not strictly of the traditional kind, I suggest you dive into the traditional kind as well to see how effective these new kinds of practices are, for your own awareness, to see if they're really effective or if they're really worth trying, or if it's just, I don't know, just another innovation with no real effectiveness to it. So, goodbye, and have a good day. It's early spring, and let's hope this stupid coronavirus just goes away. Temperatures are going to come up. Vaccines are being produced. Good times. People are going to start traveling again. There's a lot to look forward to. Bye bye.